Hello, Maverick traders. Welcome out to your market roundup. It's July 23rd. Corey here with you. We're going to take a look at meaningful news in the markets. We're going to look at sector rotations. We're going to look at some market internals in terms of the heat map. And we've certainly been seeing a little bit of red heat into energy. We'll touch on that more. And then, of course, highlight our best ideas.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional stock and option traders. Maverick Trading is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
So today was a very, very quiet day in the markets. If we zoom into the Dow, S&P, NASDAQ, there was really nothing happening. I mean, perfectly flat. IWM was up 1%, and this is more of what we've been seeing, this rotation. Now, oil down 1%. We talked about the energy weakness. The energy sector just doesn't look quite right. A lot of the underlying stocks within the energy sector don't look quite right. So energy, we'll touch on that more as we highlight some bearish ideas. Daily news, Ethereum ETF has been approved by the SEC, now live trading. And then this rotation, like we said, out of large cap tech into the Russell 2000, into the equal weight S&P names. Basically a rotation out of Apple and Nvidia and those types of names of late. Again, we're only a week or two into this rotation, but it's certainly happening. Advanced decline line, like we said, perfectly flat, half going up, half going down. The 50-period moving average still bullish with 2/3 of stocks above the 50 MA. Now, if we look at the S&P, you can see this bounce that we've been in, but as I touched on yesterday in the market roundup, are we going to be able to accelerate higher? I think when you have a gap, it's energy, it's power, they stand out on the chart, and I want you to identify when gaps happen. When there are gaps, there's so often some nice follow through that emerges over the next couple of weeks. So do I still think there's more follow through to the downside? I tend to think that's the case. And if we look at the sector, the group that's been leading to the upside, it was the NASDAQ 100, this QQQ chart. Well, this looks even weaker. Again, you still have the gap down, but in this case, we can even kind of say, well, you bounced off of the support. I mean, perfectly. That prior low is exactly where we bounced. We're trying to hold that support, but where might we fail? Well, if you look at this little peak here, it gives you a pretty good idea of what the peak can be over here. So I would anticipate, you might recognize this as a head and shoulder top. Basically, it's setting a lower swing high is what I would anticipate is going to occur. And that's often how reversals happen, is you don't want to try to predict the high. Trying to pick the high is just kind of a loser's game, because I might have thought this was the high and then that was the high and they just keep going higher. What's a little safer, I think a little smarter, is to say, well, I'm not going to pick the peak. I'm going to wait for a meaningful reversal like this gap, and then I'm going to try to pick off the lower swing high. I'm going to try to get bearish as it makes a lower swing high and reverses over. There's plenty of money to be made on the downside if the market trend is rolling over, if the NASDAQ 100 is selling off. Now, how do we know we're wrong? Well, essentially, you can kind of look at that peak over here, and we really shouldn't go much above that. Just as we're trying to hold that support, any bounce here should probably stay below that level. And if we can get above that level, well, obviously you're back above the 20-period moving average. Strength has reemerged. We don't really want to fight that battle. But if we do indeed fail right here and set a lower swing high and roll over, you want to be prepared for that. And that's where I would anticipate the markets are going. So as we talked about in the heat map, energy, it just has a pocket of weakness right now. Oil selling off. Energy stocks look heavy. Some key levels have been breached in those names. Just not a pretty picture. If we look over here at semiconductors, they had a really rough morning as well, and you can see quite a bit of red there. The green is a little bit more spread out, but certainly the industrial space. Now, yesterday in the market roundup, I highlighted Caterpillar. That's an industrial stock as an example. But looking in that industrial sector, even trading XLI could be an area of interest. So markets are still in an uptrend, but I think it's a little bit of a shaky short-term uptrend. We'll be watching for that lower swing high. So here's some ideas for bulls and bears. First, on the bullish side. Now, Ford reports earnings, so I'm not really going to trade that into the earnings, but the chart's pretty good. These other two names, Johnson & Johnson and Lockheed Martin, look pretty good for some potential follow through. So J&J broke sharply higher, now pulling back in price, and you can see this kind of bottoming out process, this rounded shape to it. Now we're pulling back, but realistically, this is most likely to be a dip worth looking at buying into, and just a bullish retracement, just retracing back some of the advance and then quite possibly moving back up to the upside. So J&J, it has kind of that consumer staple slash healthcare area, that value area, if you will, where sector rotation has been happening. Could be a beneficiary of just that. Lockheed Martin is in the industrial space, and you can see the big gap higher, the strong move, and continued buying here on this bullish breakout. Now, it's hard to chase a stock that's already up that much, but what you'll often see is a little high base or even a little minor pullback and then further advance. So I would be looking for entry opportunities into LMT, even if it's not immediately. Meta on the bearish side. So this is one of those large cap tech names. This is the artist formerly known as Facebook, Meta. And we can see some gaps to the downside. We've come up and filled this gap. We're right underneath those moving averages. And today we had kind of a long upper shadow candle, which is a sign of sellers pushing back after the stock tried to rally above the 50 MA. It was a failed move above the 50 MA, and from false moves come fast moves. Meta looks poised to move lower and pretty darn soon. So this one looks and feels a little more bearish and probably will start to sell off in the near term. I think a move back to support at 460, this lower end of the range, seems like a worthy target for Meta. PayPal is another that looks pretty bearish. We talked about flag patterns yesterday in the market roundup. This is one of those flag type of patterns where you have a little bit of a corrective phase up, but ultimately it's just that. It's just a correction, a little bit deeper pullback, but ultimately going to resume the trend. And the overall trend for PayPal has been from upper left to lower right. It is in a downward trend, and I see this as just a bear flag pattern with more follow through to go. So as we look at markets, I'm going to be watching for that lower swing high. If it doesn't materialize, fine. Markets are good. They recovered. Great. But I suspect there's a little more selling that wants to come into this market. Friday, we've got core PCE. Tomorrow on the earnings front, as I said, it's a busy week. We've got Ford, General Dynamics, IBM, Newmont Mining, ServiceNow, AT&T, WM is Waste Management. So we've got plenty of different companies to keep us busy on the earnings side as well. Hope you enjoyed the market roundup. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next time.